The Star Whisper cut through the darkness of space, its blue engines humming quietly. Commander Zalrex sat in his captain's chair, watching the stars through the viewing window. His green skin reflected the soft light from the control panels around him. The Viridian crew had been on patrol for 3 weeks, checking the outer edges of known space for any problems. Suddenly, the ship's computer made a loud beeping sound. Communications Officer Telnix looked up from her station with wide, purple eyes. "Commander, we're getting a distress signal from Sector 79 Alpha. It's very weak, but it's definitely there." Zalrex stood up and walked over to her station. His long, thin fingers moved across the controls as he listened to the crackling signal. "Can you clean it up? I want to know what we're dealing with." Telnix worked for several minutes, adjusting different settings. Finally, a clearer signal came through the speakers. It was definitely a distress call, but the language was strange. The words sounded harsh and choppy, unlike the smooth tones of Viridian speech. "That's not any language in our database," said Science Officer Velkin from across the bridge. He was a shorter Viridian with darker green skin and small, clever eyes. "But the signal pattern suggests it might be from that new species we've heard rumors about, the ones they call humans." Zalrex nodded slowly. Humans were still a mystery to most of the galaxy. They had appeared in space only recently, and very few alien species had actually met them face to face. Most of what anyone knew came from distant observations and second-hand stories. "Set course for the signal," Zalrex ordered, "but keep our weapons ready. We don't know what we're walking into." The Star Whisper changed direction and sped toward the distress signal. As they got closer, their sensors picked up a large object floating in space. It was clearly a ship, but its design was unlike anything the Viridians had seen before. The hull was mostly white and silver, with strange markings on the side that must have been human writing. "The ship is called the Deep Explorer," Telnix reported, reading from her screen. "It's definitely human and it looks badly damaged. I'm seeing hull breaches on the port side and their engines are completely dead." Zalrex studied the damaged ship through the viewing window. "Any signs of life?" "Yes, but it's strange," Velkin said, looking confused at his readings. "I'm detecting human life signs, but there are other life forms too, big ones, and they're moving around inside the ship." Security Chief Morden stepped forward. He was the largest Viridian on the crew, with thick arms and a serious expression. "Could be pirates who attacked the ship. They might have left some of their own people behind to guard the humans. Or it could be something worse," Zalrex said quietly. "Prepare a boarding party. Full protective gear and weapons ready. We go in carefully." 20 minutes later, Zalrex, Mordan, and 2 other security officers floated through space toward the damaged human ship. Their spacesuits were equipped with the best Viridian technology, including force shields and energy weapons. They found an airlock that was still working and managed to get inside. The inside of the human ship was dark and quiet. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls and the air felt thick and strange. The Viridians moved slowly through the corridors, their weapons ready. Everything seemed too quiet, too still. "Life signs are coming from up ahead," Mordan whispered, into his communicator. "The medical bay, I think." They rounded a corner and stopped at a doorway. Zalrex carefully looked inside, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Several humans were lying on the floor, unconscious or maybe dead. But standing over them were the most terrifying creatures he had ever seen. The largest one was massive, with thick brown and black fur covering a powerful body. Its head was huge, with a long snout full of sharp white teeth. Its eyes were dark and intelligent, watching everything around it. When it saw the Viridians, it raised its head and made a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from deep in its chest. There were 2 other creatures nearby, smaller but just as dangerous looking. They had sleek bodies and alert ears that moved toward every sound. All 3 beasts stood protectively around the unconscious humans, like guards watching over prisoners. "By the 7 moons," Morden whispered. "What are those things?" Zalrex couldn't answer. He had never seen anything like these creatures in any alien database. They looked like pure predators, built for hunting and killing. Their muscles moved under their fur as they paced back and forth, never taking their eyes off the humans on the floor. The largest creature took a step closer to one of the unconscious humans, and Zalrex saw something that made his heart race with fear. The human was a male with dark hair, wearing what looked like a captain's uniform. The beast lowered its massive head toward the human's face, and Zalrex was sure they were about to witness something horrible. But instead of attacking, the creature gently nuzzled the human's hand with its nose. It made a soft whining sound, almost like it was worried or sad. Then it lay down next to the human, keeping its body between the unconscious man and the doorway where the Viridians were hiding. "It's protecting him," Velkan said in amazement. "But why would a predator protect its prey?" "Maybe they're not prey," Morden said grimly. "Maybe they're slaves." The idea sent chills through all of them. Could these humans have been enslaved by these powerful creatures? Were they being kept alive for some terrible purpose? The beast certainly looked capable of forcing humans to do whatever they wanted. Zalrex activated his recording device, making sure to capture everything they were seeing. This information would need to be reported to the Viridian High Command immediately. If humans were being controlled by these dangerous predators, it could mean trouble for the entire galaxy. As they watched, one of the smaller creatures lifted its head and looked directly at their hiding spot. Its ears moved forward, and it made a low sound to alert the others. All three beasts turned toward the doorway, their eyes bright and alert. "They know we're here," Morden said, raising his weapon. "Orders, Commander?" Zalrex felt sweat running down his green skin inside his suit. These creatures looked like they could tear through Viridian body armor without any trouble. And if they were controlling humans, who knew what other powers they might have? "We retreat," he said firmly. "Back to the ship, now." The Viridians moved quickly through the corridors, hearing the sound of claws clicking on metal behind them. They didn't stop moving until they were safely back aboard the Star Whisper, with the airlock sealed tight behind them. As their ship pulled away from the damaged human vessel, Zalrex stared at the footage Mordan had recorded. The images of those powerful creatures standing guard over the helpless humans would haunt his dreams for weeks to come. "Set course for home," he ordered. "Maximum speed. The High Command needs to know about this immediately." Dr. Felgon sat in his research lab deep inside the Viridian Science Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing data from across the galaxy. His thin green fingers moved quickly over the controls as he pulled up report after report. What he was seeing made his stomach twist with worry. The emergency meeting had been called 3 days ago, right after Commander Zalrex returned with his disturbing footage from the human ship. Now every Viridian outpost, trading station, and exploration vessel was sending in their own observations about humans and the creatures that seemed to control them. "Computer, show me the Kepler system reports," Dr. Felgon said out loud. A new set of images appeared in front of him. These came from a Viridian trading post that had been watching human mining operations from a safe distance. The pictures were grainy, taken through long-range scanners, but they were clear enough to see what was happening. In one image, a human female with short black hair was working at some kind of industrial equipment. Next to her sat a small, four-legged creature with pointed ears and a long tail. The creature's eyes were bright green, and it watched everything the human did with intense focus. "Zoom in on Sector 47, Dr. Felgon ordered. The image got bigger, and he could see more details. The human woman was definitely working, operating heavy machinery that looked like it was mining precious metals from asteroids. But every few minutes, she would stop her work and reach down to touch the small creature beside her. Sometimes she would even give it food from her own supplies. Dr. Felgon shook his head in confusion. Why would a human give away her own food to feed a creature that was probably keeping her prisoner? It didn't make sense unless the psychological control was even deeper than they had first thought. He opened another file, this one from the Antares colonies. A crystalline observer had managed to record footage of human settlements from orbit. The images showed large buildings where humans lived, and in every single picture there were creatures moving around with them. Some of the creatures were massive, easily as big as the beasts Commander Zalrex had encountered. They had long legs and powerful bodies, and humans were actually climbing onto their backs and riding them around the settlement. Dr. Felgon watched in horror as humans seemed to willingly put themselves at the mercy of these powerful animals. In other pictures, he saw smaller creatures that looked more like the one from the mining station. These seemed to live right inside human homes. Through the windows of human buildings, the crystalline observer had captured images of humans lying on soft furniture with these creatures curled up next to them, as if they were sleeping together. "This is worse than we thought," Dr. Felgon muttered to himself. He pulled up reports from the Outer Rim territories, where human exploration teams had been spotted by various alien species. A Zephyrian scout ship had observed a group of human explorers walking through a dangerous jungle world. But they weren't alone. Moving with them were sleek, four-legged creatures that seemed to be watching for threats. The Zephyrians had assumed these were guard animals, protecting their human masters. But as Dr. Felgon studied the behavioral patterns, he realized something much more sinister might be happening. The creatures were leading the humans, choosing which paths to take through the jungle. They were making the decisions, not the humans. Another report from the same region. Human scouts had been seen with flying creatures perched on their shoulders. These winged beasts had sharp claws and curved beaks that could easily tear through flesh. Yet the humans carried them around like they were precious cargo, feeding them and talking to them constantly. Dr. Felgon opened his personal research notes and began typing rapidly. Pattern analysis. Human-creature relationships, he wrote, at the top of the document. Observation 1. Humans consistently provide food and shelter to potentially dangerous creatures. This behavior appears to be compulsive, suggesting psychological conditioning or control. Observation 2. Humans show emotional attachment to these creatures, even risking their own safety to protect them. Several reports indicate humans putting themselves in danger to rescue creatures from hazardous situations. Observation 3. The creatures appear to have different roles in human society. Some seem to be guards or protectors, others appear to be scouts or hunters, and still others seem to serve as companions or status symbols. As he typed, Dr. Felgon remembered something from his xenobiology studies. There were stories, old legends really, about species that could control other life forms through chemical signals or psychic influence. Could these creatures be using some kind of biological warfare against humans? He opened a new file and began cataloging the different types of creatures that had been observed with humans. The variety was staggering. There were small, furry creatures that seemed to live inside human homes. There were medium-sized creatures with long snouts and loyal behavior that followed humans everywhere. There were massive creatures that humans rode like vehicles. There were even aquatic creatures that humans swam with in oceans and lakes. How did they do it? Dr. Felgon wondered out loud. How did these creatures manage to take control of an entire species? He pulled up the latest report from the Kepler-7 mining station. The human female, whose name appeared to be So Min according to intercepted communications, was still working alongside the small creature. But the Viridian observers had noticed something new. So Min had started talking to the creature while she worked, not just giving it commands, but actually having conversations with it as if it could understand her words. Sometimes she would laugh at something, though the observers couldn't figure out what was funny. Other times she would look sad, and the creature would come closer to her, making soft sounds that seemed to comfort her. The psychological control is complete, Dr. Felgon wrote in his notes. Humans have been conditioned to believe these creatures are their friends or companions. They may not even realize they are being controlled. He leaned back in his chair and looked at all the data floating around him. Hundreds of reports from dozens of star systems, all showing the same thing. Humans living under the control of various species of creatures, providing for them, protecting them, and following their lead without question. The most disturbing part was how widespread it was. This wasn't just happening in one or two human colonies. It was everywhere humans had been observed. From the smallest research outposts to the largest cities, these creatures were always present, always watching, always controlling. Dr. Felgon activated his communication system and sent a priority message to the Viridian High Command. Urgent. Human species appears to be under complete biological or psychological control by multiple predator species. Recommend immediate galactic alert and quarantine protocols. The spread of this phenomenon could threaten all intelligent life in the galaxy. He attached all of his research files to the message and sent it off. Then he sat back and stared at the images still floating around his lab. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were living their lives thinking they were free, while creatures that should be their natural enemies controlled their every move. The galaxy needed to know about this threat before it was too late. Dr. Felgon just hoped they would listen before these mysterious creatures found a way to extend their control beyond the human species. The massive dome of the Galactic Assembly Hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for the emergency session. Ambassador Tholvak of the Viridian Republic stood at the center podium, his green skin pale with worry, as he prepared to address the most diverse collection of alien minds in the known galaxy. The circular chamber was built to accommodate every type of life form imaginable. Aquatic beings floated in specialized water tanks while silicon-based creatures rested on heated stone platforms. Gas-breathing entities hovered in transparent atmospheric bubbles, and energy beings flickered like living lightning within containment fields. Honored delegates, Tholvak began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. We face a crisis unlike anything in our recorded history. A new species has entered our galaxy, and they bring with them a threat that could change the balance of power forever. A three-dimensional hologram appeared above the central platform, showing images from Dr. Felgon's extensive research. The first image showed the damaged human ship Deep Explorer, with those terrifying creatures standing guard over unconscious humans. Delegate Zixara from the Crystalline Collective shifted her geometric body, causing musical chimes to ring out. These images are indeed disturbing, Ambassador Tholvak, but we have observed similar phenomena in our own territory. The hologram changed to show new footage. Human settlements on the planet Kepler Prime came into view, with humans moving alongside, massive four-legged creatures. But these weren't the same animals from the previous images. These were enormous beasts with flowing hair and powerful legs, easily large enough to crush a human with a single step. Watch carefully, Zixara continued, her crystalline voice ringing through the hall. Notice how the humans climb onto the backs of these creatures willingly. Our behavioral analysts believe this represents the final stage of domination, where the controlled species actually believes they are in command of their captors. The assembled delegates watched in horrified fascination as humans rode these massive beasts across open fields. The creatures moved with perfect coordination, as if they were part of some larger military formation. Some humans carried weapons while riding, suggesting they were being used as a cavalry force by their animal controllers. Delegate Morthax from the Plasma Confederation flickered brighter with agitation. This confirms our worst fears. We have intercepted communications from human worlds where they refer to these creatures as horses. But no rational being would willingly climb onto the back of such a dangerous predator unless their minds had been completely compromised. The hologram shifted again, now showing underwater footage from the ocean world of Aquatica 7. The images made several delegates gasp in shock. Humans were swimming alongside massive aquatic creatures with rows of razor-sharp teeth and sleek, predatory bodies. The Nebula Federation has documented over 200 instances of humans voluntarily entering water with these apex ocean predators, reported Ambassador Silneth, her tentacles writhing with anxiety. We initially assumed the humans were being used as bait or food, but remarkably the creatures seemed to be protecting them, guiding them through the water as if they were teaching them something. The footage showed humans holding onto fins and being pulled through the water at incredible speeds. The creatures, which looked like they could swallow a human whole, instead seemed to be playing some kind of game with them. Delegate Zenthor from the Iron Republic stood up, his metallic body clanking as he moved. Honored Assembly, we cannot continue to simply observe this catastrophe. These creatures have clearly developed some form of biological or psychic control over the human species. If we don't act soon, they may find ways to extend their influence to other races. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The evidence was overwhelming. Every report from every corner of the galaxy showed the same pattern. humans living in complete servitude to various species of animals, convinced that they were making their own choices. I propose immediate military intervention, Zenthor continued, his voice booming with mechanical authority. We must liberate the humans before it's too late. If these beastmasters can control one intelligent species, they could potentially control us all. The debate that followed was intense. Some delegates argued for a rescue mission to free the humans from their animal captors. Others suggested a complete quarantine of human space to prevent the spread of whatever biological or psychic influence. These creatures were using Ambassador Veltar from the Symbiotic Union raised a different concern. What if the humans are willing participants? Our own species lives in harmony with other life forms, but we maintain our free will. Perhaps humans have developed a similar relationship, but without proper safeguards. Impossible, countered Dr. Kilvex, who had been invited to present his scientific analysis. The behavioral patterns we've observed indicate complete submission. Humans regularly sacrifice their own food and shelter to provide for these creatures. They risk their lives to protect animals that could easily kill them. This level of self-destructive behavior can only be explained by external mental control. While the Galactic Assembly debated the fate of humanity, life continued as normal on Research Station Alpha 9. Scientist Yoon-ji sat at her workstation, studying star formation patterns in a distant nebula. The data streaming across her screens was complex and required constant attention to detail. Nova, can you check Section 7 for me? Yoon-ji asked without looking away from her primary display. A medium-sized creature with black and white fur immediately moved to a secondary computer terminal. Nova placed her paws on a specially designed interface and began manipulating the controls with remarkable precision. Her brown eyes focused intently on the screen as she isolated the requested data section. Good girl, Yoon-ji said, reaching over to scratch behind Nova's ears. I don't know what I'd do without you. Your pattern recognition abilities are better than any computer we have. Nova wagged her tail and returned to her position beside Yoon-ji's chair. The two of them had been working together for 3 years, and their partnership had resulted in several breakthrough discoveries about stellar phenomena. Nova's ability to spot subtle patterns in cosmic radiation had helped identify 17 new star systems. Unknown to both of them, a Viridian observation probe drifted silently outside the station, recording everything. The footage would later be analyzed by alien scientists who would conclude that Nova was clearly the one in charge of the research project, using Yoon-ji as a tool to operate equipment that her paws couldn't handle directly. Back in the assembly hall, the debate was reaching a crescendo. Delegate after delegate stood to share their own encounters with humans and their mysterious animal companions. A crystalline trader reported seeing humans with small flying creatures perched on their shoulders, creatures that seemed to be giving them directions through some kind of telepathic link. A Nebula Federation explorer described watching humans in Arctic environments following pack animals through frozen wastelands, apparently being led to sources of food and shelter that the humans couldn't have found on their own. The evidence is clear, Ambassador Tholvak declared as the session neared its end. Humanity has fallen under the control of a vast network of predatory species. Whether through biological warfare, psychic manipulation, or some combination of both, these creatures have achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. The final vote was close, but the Assembly ultimately decided on a policy of cautious observation, combined with limited quarantine protocols. Any human ships approaching alien territory would be met by diplomatic vessels, ostensibly to offer aid but actually to assess the level of animal control present. We must document everything, Tholvak concluded. If these beastmasters ever turn their attention to other species, we need to understand their methods. The survival of free will in our galaxy may depend on solving this mystery. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, each returned to their homeworlds carrying the same disturbing message. Humanity had become the first known species to be completely domesticated by their own pets, and no one knew how to reverse the process. 3 weeks after the emergency rescue, First Officer Jin Ho sat in the medical bay of the Viridian station, watching his captain slowly recover from the accident that had nearly killed their entire crew. Captain Hyunwoo was finally awake and talking, though he still needed rest. The human crew of the Deep Explorer had been treated well by their alien rescuers, but Jin-Ho could sense something strange in how the Viridians acted around them. "Rex, come here, boy," Jin-Ho called softly, not wanting to disturb the other patients in the medical facility. The large German shepherd immediately trotted over from where he had been lying near Captain Hyunwoo's bed. Rex's tail wagged as he approached, his dark eyes bright and alert. Even after the traumatic accident that had damaged their ship, Rex remained the same loyal companion he had always been. Jin-Ho noticed how the Viridian medical staff stepped back whenever Rex moved around the room. Their green skin seemed to turn a paler shade, and they kept their distance even though Rex had never shown any aggression toward them. It was puzzling behavior that Jin-Ho couldn't quite understand. "Sir," said Communications Officer Telnix, the Viridian who had been assigned as their liaison, "Commander Zalrex would like to arrange a formal diplomatic meeting with your people to discuss the situation." Jin-Ho looked up from where he was checking Rex's paws for any injuries from their emergency landing. "What situation? I thought this was just a standard rescue operation. We're grateful for your help, of course." Telnix exchanged glances with her colleague, Dr. Velkan, who had been treating the human crew. Both aliens seemed nervous about something they weren't saying directly. "It's about your companions," Dr. Velkan said carefully, gesturing toward Rex and the two other German shepherds who were resting near other crew members. "We need to better understand the relationship between your species and these creatures." Jin-Ho felt even more confused. "Creatures? You mean our dogs? What's to understand? They're part of our crew." The two Viridians looked at each other again, and Jin-Ho could see they were having some kind of silent conversation. Finally, Telnix spoke up. "Commander Zalrex believes it would be best to discuss this in a more formal setting. Would you be willing to meet with our diplomatic team? You may bring your, security detail." "Security detail?" Jin-Ho laughed. "You mean Rex and the others? Sure, they can come along. They're probably getting bored stuck in here anyway." The meeting was scheduled for the following day at a neutral conference room on the station. Jin-Ho brought along Engineer Min-Soo and Navigator Bo Young, the two crew members who were in the best condition to attend. Captain Hyunwoo was still too weak to leave the medical bay. As they walked toward the conference room, Jin-Ho noticed how other aliens on the station reacted to their presence. A group of crystalline beings quickly moved to the other side of the corridor when they saw the humans approaching with their dogs. A Nebula Federation trader actually backed into a storage room and waited for them to pass. "Are we missing something here?" Min-Soo whispered to Jin-Ho. "Everyone's acting like we're carrying a plague or something." "I don't know," Jin-Ho replied quietly. "But I guess we're about to find out." The conference room was large and circular, designed to accommodate different types of alien physiology. Commander Zalrex sat at one side of the table with several other Viridian officials. Their body language was tense, almost fearful, as the humans entered the room. Rex, Duke, and Bella walked calmly beside their human companions, just as they had done thousands of times before during routine ship operations. But the moment the dogs entered the room, every Viridian delegate shifted backward in their chairs. "Please sit," Commander Zalrex said, his voice carefully controlled. "And your guards may position themselves wherever they feel is appropriate." Jin-Ho looked around the room, trying to figure out what was making everyone so nervous. "Guards? Oh, you mean the dogs. They're not guards, they're family. Rex, Duke, Bella, just lie down wherever you're comfortable." The three German shepherds found spots near the conference table and settled down for what they clearly expected to be a boring human meeting. Rex yawned and put his head on his paws, while Duke started cleaning his paw with his tongue. "Commander," Zalrex cleared his throat. "First Officer Jin-Ho, we need to discuss a matter of great importance. Our observations have led us to believe that your species may be in a state of subjugation." "Subjugation?" Jin-Ho repeated, genuinely confused. "To who?" Zalrex gestured carefully toward Rex. "To them. These apex predators that accompany you everywhere. We have documented evidence from across the galaxy showing humans under the control of various species of dangerous creatures. Jinho stared at the Viridian commander for a long moment, trying to process what he had just heard. Then he looked down at Rex, who was now lying on his side with his legs stretched out, looking about as threatening as a fuzzy slipper. "You think we're being controlled by our dogs?" Jinho asked slowly. "The behavioral evidence is overwhelming," said Dr. Felgon, who had joined the meeting via holographic projection. "Humans consistently provide food and shelter for these creatures. You risk your lives to protect them. You follow their lead in dangerous situations. These are clear signs of psychological domination." Minsu started to laugh, then quickly covered her mouth when she saw how serious the aliens were. "I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. Dogs don't control us. We domesticated them thousands of years ago. They're our companions." "Domesticated?" Commander Zalrex repeated the word like it was foreign to him. "What does this mean?" Jinho realized this was a serious misunderstanding that needed to be cleared up immediately. "Rex, come here," he called. Rex immediately got up and trotted over to Jinho, his tail wagging. The Viridian delegates tensed, clearly expecting something dangerous to happen. "Sit," Jinho said simply. Rex sat down immediately, looking up at Jinho with bright, attentive eyes. "Good boy. Now shake." Rex lifted his right paw and placed it in Jinho's outstretched hand. Jinho shook the paw gently, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small treat which Rex accepted politely. "Stay," Jinho said, holding up his hand. Rex remained perfectly still as Jinho walked to the other side of the room. "Come." Rex bounded over to Jinho, his whole body wiggling with excitement. Jinho scratched behind Rex's ears, and the big dog leaned into the affection with obvious pleasure. The Viridian delegates watched this display with growing amazement. Commander Zalrex leaned forward in his chair. "The creature is obeying your commands, but our research clearly shows humans serving these animals, not the other way around. We take care of each other," Navigator Bo Young explained. "Yes, we feed them and give them shelter, but they protect us, work with us, and provide companionship. It's a partnership that benefits both species." Jinho pulled a small rubber ball from his pocket, something he always carried for Rex during long space voyages. "Watch this," he said, and threw the ball across the room. Rex's eyes immediately focused on the ball, tracking its movement with intense concentration. The moment it bounced off the far wall, he was running after it, his powerful legs carrying him across the room in a few quick strides. He caught the ball in his mouth, then turned around and ran back to Jinho with his tail wagging furiously. "Drop it," Jinho said. Rex dropped the ball at Jinho's feet and sat down, panting happily and looking up expectantly for another throw. The conference room was completely silent for several long seconds. Then Commander Zalrex spoke in a voice filled with wonder and disbelief. The creature, it was playing. It was enjoying the activity. "Of course he was," Jinho said, picking up the ball and giving Rex another scratch behind the ears. "Dogs love to play fetch. It's one of their favorite games." Dr. Felgon's holographic image flickered as he processed this new information. "But our research showed humans sacrificing their own resources to feed these creatures. We interpreted this as evidence of control or coercion. We feed them because we love them," Minsu said simply. "Just like we'd feed our children or take care of our elderly relatives. They're part of our families." The revelation hit the Viridian delegates like a physical blow. Everything they had observed, all the evidence they had gathered, suddenly made sense in a completely different way. Humans weren't being controlled by animals. They had formed voluntary partnerships with them based on mutual affection and benefit. Commander Zalrex sat back in his chair, his green skin flushing darker with embarrassment. "We have made a terrible mistake. The Galactic Assembly has been preparing intervention protocols to liberate your species from what we believed was animal control." Jinho couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of the situation. "Well, I guess this explains why everyone's been acting so strange around us. Don't worry, it's an understandable mistake. The relationship between humans and dogs is probably unique in the galaxy." As if to emphasize the point, Rex chose that moment to flop down on his side and start scratching behind his ear with his back leg, looking completely ridiculous and utterly harmless. The sight of this terrifying apex predator giving himself a good scratch finally broke the tension in the room, and even some of the Viridian delegates began to relax. The diplomatic meeting that had been planned to address a galactic crisis had instead become the first step toward a much more interesting conversation about friendship, loyalty, and the bonds that could form between different species when they chose to trust each other. The news spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days of the diplomatic meeting on the Viridian station, every major news network was broadcasting the story of the Great Misunderstanding. What had started as fears of human enslavement by dangerous beasts had transformed into fascination with something completely unprecedented in galactic history. Dr. Felgon found himself at the center of a scientific revolution. His research lab, once focused on documenting what he believed was the conquest of humanity, now buzzed with excitement as xenobiologists from dozens of species requested access to his data. But this time they weren't looking for evidence of mind control. They wanted to understand how two completely different species could form such strong emotional bonds. The applications are extraordinary, Dr. Felgon explained to a gathering of scientists from the Crystalline Collective. His voice carried a wonder that hadn't been there during his earlier, darker research. Humans have somehow learned to communicate across species barriers in ways we never thought possible. The first official cultural exchange program was established 3 months after the revelation. The location was a neutral space station called Harmony Point, built specifically for interspecies research. When the human delegation arrived, they brought with them something the galaxy had never seen before: a living demonstration of human-animal partnerships. Researcher Da Young stepped off the transport ship with a small carrier in her arms. The alien observers watched nervously as she opened the carrier, and a sleek black creature emerged. The animal had bright green eyes and moved with fluid grace, immediately beginning to explore its new surroundings. "This is Midnight," Da Young announced, to the assembled crowd of alien scientists. "She's a cat, one of humanity's oldest companions." The Viridian delegates, now much more relaxed than they had been during their first encounters, leaned forward with interest. Midnight approached one of them and began making a strange rumbling sound that seemed to come from deep in her chest. "She's purring," Da Young explained. "It means she's content and happy. Cats purr when they feel safe and comfortable." Dr. Kilvex, the Viridian behavioral specialist, extended one green finger toward Midnight. The cat sniffed it delicately, then rubbed her head against his hand. The rumbling sound got louder. "Remarkable," Dr. Kilvex whispered. "She's choosing to make physical contact with an unknown species. There's no fear response at all." The demonstration continued as more humans arrived with different types of companions. Engineer Tae Hyun brought his border collie, Comet, who immediately impressed the alien observers by demonstrating his ability to understand complex commands and solve simple puzzles. The dog's intelligence and eagerness to please fascinated species that had never seen cooperation between different life forms. Perhaps the most dramatic moment came when Marine Sergeant Yeon Su arrived with her German shepherd, Thor. The aliens had read about these dangerous predators in Dr. Felgon's original reports, and some still seemed nervous as the large dog entered the research area. "Thor is trained for military work," Yeon Su explained. "But watch what happens when he's off duty." She unclipped Thor's leash and gave him a simple command: "Free time." Immediately, the powerful military dog transformed. His alert, professional posture relaxed, and he began exploring the room with the curiosity of a puppy. When he encountered a group of young crystalline researchers, instead of showing any aggression, he gently nuzzled their geometric forms and wagged his tail when they made musical sounds of delight. "The same individual can switch between professional duty and personal affection," observed Ambassador Silneth from the Nebula Federation. "This suggests a level of emotional complexity we hadn't anticipated." But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Hae-jin, a veterinarian who had volunteered for the exchange program, brought his African gray parrot Einstein. The sight of a flying creature that could actually speak in human language left the alien observers speechless. Hello, everyone, Einstein said clearly, looking around the room with bright, intelligent eyes. Pretty birds, pretty birds. The crystalline delegates actually started chiming in harmony, a sign of extreme excitement in their species. A creature that could fly, think, and communicate in human language challenged everything they thought they knew about the limitations of cross-species relationships. Einstein can learn over 200 words, Dr. He-Jin explained. But more importantly, he understands context. He knows when to comfort me when I'm sad, when to be quiet during important work, and when it's appropriate to play and have fun. If to demonstrate, Einstein looked at the fascinated aliens and said, "What's up, Doc?" in a perfect imitation of Dr. He-Jin's voice, then laughed with a sound exactly like human laughter. The cultural exchange programs expanded rapidly. Within 6 months, research stations throughout the galaxy were hosting human visitors and their animal companions. Each demonstration revealed new aspects of the human-animal bond that amazed and inspired alien observers. The Zephyrian Confederacy requested a special presentation about horses after their scouts reported seeing humans riding these massive creatures. When Captain Min-jun arrived at their homeworld with 3 horses, a gentle mare named Luna, a spirited stallion called Storm, and a patient gelding named Buddy, the Zephyrians couldn't believe what they were seeing. "The creature weighs 10 times more than the human," noted Zephyrian scientist Dr. Zixmel, "yet it allows itself to be directed by voice commands and subtle body language. The level of trust required is extraordinary." Captain Min-jun demonstrated by riding Luna bareback, with no saddle or bridle, communicating with the horse through tiny shifts in weight and gentle touches. The partnership between human and horse was so seamless that many observers initially thought they were watching some form of telepathic communication. The most profound impact came from the establishment of new diplomatic protocols. The Galactic Assembly created the Department of Interspecies Companionship, dedicated to studying and facilitating positive relationships between different life forms throughout the galaxy. Dr. Wu Jin, a veterinarian from Seoul Station, became the galaxy's first certified interspecies behavioral specialist. His job was unlike anything that had existed before. He traveled from world to world, helping alien species understand not just how humans bonded with animals, but how they might develop similar relationships with creatures on their own planets. The key insight, Dr. Wu Jin explained during a lecture at the Galactic Science Academy, is that humans didn't conquer these animals or control them. We learned to communicate with them, to understand their needs and desires, and to build relationships based on mutual benefit and genuine affection. His work led to breakthrough discoveries on dozens of worlds. The Crystalline Collective learned to form harmonious relationships with the singing crystals of their homeworld, creatures they had previously considered mere geological formations. The Nebula Federation developed partnerships with the energy, beings that lived in their gas clouds, creating the first truly symbiotic civilization in known history. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed cooperation itself. Before contact with humans, most species saw relationships in terms of dominance and submission, predator and prey, or at best, temporary alliances of convenience. Humans had demonstrated something revolutionary, that different species could choose to care for each other, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The bond between a human and their dog, cat, horse, or bird wasn't based on fear or necessity. It was based on love. As Dr. Felgon wrote in his final report to the Galactic Assembly, "We spent months searching for evidence of how humans had been conquered by animals. Instead, we discovered that humanity's greatest achievement isn't their technology, their art, or their exploration of space. Their greatest achievement is their ability to make friends across the boundaries of species, creating bonds of loyalty and affection that last a lifetime." The report concluded with a recommendation that changed galactic civilization forever. "We propose that all species in the Assembly begin studying human domestication practices, not as a military strategy or a form of control, but as a pathway to a more cooperative and peaceful galaxy." Within a generation, the practice of interspecies companionship had spread to dozens of worlds. The galaxy became a more connected, more empathetic place. all because humans had taught everyone else that the strongest bonds aren't forged through force or fear, but through friendship, trust, and unconditional love. And at the center of it, all were the simple partnerships between humans and their animal companions. Relationships so natural to humans that they had never realized how revolutionary they were until they shared them with the stars.